Imagine you run the most successful company of its kind in the entire world. Your flagship product isn't just popular, it is beloved. For nearly a century it has been woven into people's summers, their childhoods, their family tables. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most recognized things on the planet. You are, by any sane measure, winning. And now imagine that, at the height of all that success, you make a decision so bold and so misguided that it becomes a permanent cautionary tale, a decision to take that legendary, beloved product and simply erase it. Replace it. Declare that the thing everyone loved was, in effect, no longer good enough. That is exactly what one soda empire did in the 1980s, and the story of why it did it and what happened next is one of the greatest lessons in business ever recorded. Because this is not a story about a company that failed from weakness. It's a story about a company that nearly wounded itself to death from a position of overwhelming strength, by fundamentally misunderstanding the one thing it actually owned. And by the end of this video, you'll see that the mistake it made is one that empires, brands, and even people make constantly, the mistake of confusing the thing you sell with the reason people love you. To understand the blunder, you first have to understand the fear that drove it. For decades this empire had sat comfortably at the top. But it had a rival, a hungry, clever challenger that had spent years clawing at its heels. And that challenger had found a brilliant weapon. Instead of arguing about history or image, it made the fight about one thing: taste. It began staging public taste tests. Take a sip of ours, take a sip of theirs, tell us which you prefer, right here, with the labels hidden. And uncomfortably often, people picked the challenger. Its formula was a little sweeter, and in a single small sip, that sweetness tended to win. These results rattled the empire to its core. Its share of the market, while still enormous, was slowly, steadily being chipped away, year after year. In the boardroom, the mood curdled from confidence into something close to panic. The leaders looked at those taste tests, looked at the slipping numbers, and drew a fateful conclusion: if the enemy is beating us on taste, then the problem must be our taste. The problem, they decided, was the formula itself, the very recipe that had built the entire empire. And so they resolved to do the one thing no one thought they ever would. They would change it. What happened next was, on paper, a triumph of careful corporate diligence. This was not a reckless decision made overnight by fools. The empire took the challenge deadly seriously. It developed a brand new version of its flagship formula, smoother, sweeter, engineered specifically to win those head-to-head sip tests. And then it tested that new formula obsessively. It ran an enormous number of taste tests, by some accounts, involving a staggering number of people across many cities. And the results were genuinely encouraging. In those blind sip tests, a majority of tasters preferred the new formula, not only to the old one, but to the rival as well. Sit with that for a moment, because it's crucial. By the metric they had chosen, which drink wins a single blind sip, the new product was a clear winner. The data said go. The research, on its own terms, was a success. Armed with mountains of evidence that people preferred the new taste, the empire made its historic move. It announced that it was retiring its century-old formula and replacing it with the new one. The king was going to reinvent itself, backed by science, to crush its rival once and for all. It felt, from the inside, like a masterstroke. It was about to become one of the most infamous miscalculations in the history of commerce. The moment the new formula hit the shelves and the old one vanished, something happened that not a single one of those taste tests had predicted. The public did not react like consumers evaluating a beverage. They reacted like people who had just been robbed of something precious. The outrage was immediate, emotional, and enormous. People who, in a blind test, might have preferred the new taste were furious, not about flavor, but about loss. The company was flooded with an avalanche of angry phone calls, day after day. Furious letters poured in by the sackful. People formed protest groups dedicated to bringing back the original. They hoarded the old product, buying up the last remaining bottles and cans as though stockpiling treasure. Some people spoke about the change as if a piece of their own history had been taken from them, their childhood, their father's favorite drink, a taste tied to 1,000 memories, simply discontinued by a committee. A dedicated complaint line rang without pause. Grown adults described feeling genuine grief. Some warned they would simply stop buying anything the company made, ever again. It was, by any measure, no longer an argument about soda, it had become a public mourning. This was not the reaction of customers who'd been given a worse product. Objectively, in a sip, many of them liked the new one more. This was the reaction of people who had lost a friend. And the empire, staring at its mountain of positive taste test data, was utterly blindsided because it had measured the wrong thing entirely. And here we arrive at the heart of it, the lesson buried inside the disaster, the thing the whole empire had forgotten at the moment of its greatest confidence. They thought they were in the business of selling a flavor. They were not. They were in the business of selling a relationship. Over nearly 100 years, that product had stopped being merely a drink. It had become a symbol of comfort, of nostalgia, of belonging, of a certain idea of home. When you drank it, you weren't just tasting sweetness and fizz, you were touching a feeling that had been built up over generations of birthdays and summers and ordinary afternoons. That accumulated emotional meaning that was the empire's true asset. Not the syrup. Not the recipe. The bond. And the taste tests, for all their scientific rigor, were fundamentally incapable of measuring it, because a blind sip strips away everything that actually mattered. It removes the memory, the identity, the loyalty, the story, and reduces the most emotionally powerful product in the world to a few milliliters of liquid on a stranger's tongue. The company had optimized brilliantly for the one situation that never actually happens in real life: a person drinking their beloved product with no idea what it is and no feelings about it at all. They had won the sip and completely misunderstood the love. Now, to the empire's enormous credit, what it did next is the reason this became a comeback story and not just a tombstone. Faced with a full-blown public revolt, the leaders did something that must have been agonizing for a company of that size and pride. They admitted they were wrong, and they did it fast. After only a matter of months, they announced that the original formula was coming back. The beloved classic would return to shelves, right alongside the new version. And the reaction to that reversal was even more revealing than the backlash itself. People were overjoyed. The news was treated as a genuine national event. Sales of the returning classic didn't just recover, they surged. The very product the company had been so afraid was losing, the old formula it had tried to put out to pasture, came roaring back stronger and more beloved than ever. Here is the twist that business scholars have debated ever since: the whole catastrophe, in the end, may have reminded the entire world how much it truly loved the original. By threatening to take it away, the empire had accidentally shown its customers the depth of their own attachment. What began as a humiliating blunder somehow ended with the flagship product's place in people's hearts more secure than before the crisis started. It's one of the strangest redemptions in business history, a company saved not by its genius, but by its willingness to reverse its genius. The instant reality proved it wrong. So what is the real, transferable lesson here, the pattern this channel keeps uncovering in the rise and fall of the mighty? It's this: the most dangerous moment for any empire is not when it is weak. It's when it is strong, frightened, and staring at data that flatters a bad idea. Every element of this disaster came from good intentions and rigorous work. They saw a real threat. They did real research. They followed the data. And they walked straight off a cliff because they had quietly asked the wrong question. They asked, which drink tastes better in a sip, when the question that actually governed their empire was, what do people feel when they reach for us? That gap between the thing you can easily measure and the thing that actually matters is where giants fall. Numbers are seductive precisely because they feel objective and safe. But a number can only answer the question you thought to ask, and if that question misses the real source of your strength, all the rigor in the world just helps you optimize your way into a wall. The empire's flagship was never really a formula anyone could improve in a lab. It was a promise, a memory, a relationship, the kind of thing that doesn't show up in a blind taste test, and doesn't survive being treated like it does. And this is where the story stops being about soda and starts being about you. Because we all do this. We all fall in love with the measurable version of things and forget the invisible reason they matter. The company that guts the very culture that made it special, chasing an efficiency metric. The creator who abandons the strange, personal thing their audience actually loved, chasing bigger numbers. The person who optimizes their life around a salary or a follower count and slowly hollows out the relationships and meaning that were the real point all along. In every case, it's the same fatal move the soda empire made, mistaking the thing you can measure for the thing you actually own. The empire was lucky. It caught its mistake in months, had the humility to reverse it, and was handed an accidental gift when its customers' love came roaring back. Most who make this error are not so fortunate. So let me leave you with the question this whole story turns on, and I genuinely want your answer. Think about the thing in your own life you're most tempted to optimize or upgrade right now: a job, a project, a relationship, a habit. Are you sure you understand what actually makes it valuable? Or are you, like the greatest soda empire on earth, about to declare war on the very thing you love, because a number told you to? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.